Well, Greg,
Hey, greetings, brother.
where you
Glad
calling from?
Virginia.
All right, yeah, I knew you're on the East Coast. I was kind of thinking Florida.
Now, where are you at? I see you said
I'm Dallas.
Dallas. Okay. Well, cool. I'm glad we finally got to talk, and I appreciate you making the time.
Oh, I don't make the time. I just try to use it. That's all it is.
Understood.
Yeah.
Completely understood. So, how's things going with you? I've been watching and reading your stuff for a while, and I'm glad that we finally got a chance to talk.
Well, I don't know. It's always one of those things you wonder how things are going. It's all speculation until you see St. Peter. You may think you're doing pretty well, and you find out, no, you were screwing up by the numbers.
This is
On the other hand, you may think you were screwing up, and no, you're doing pretty good. It's hard to say sometimes, but I don't have any complaints.
I hear that.
No, and I've actually, I count my blessings, and I like to learn. And I've been studying some things lately. It goes to man or other animals, and I am learning. I mean, it always delights me. It's always like a gift. It's like a blessing. I get up in the morning and I don't know. First thing I do is just get out of bed and get on the computer. And then my attitude is, what am I going to learn today? What am I going to learn today? It excites me. I get so and I still have that. And I'm 73 years old. Blah blah blah. And I count that as a great blessing because I'm sure there's a lot of people my age who don't. I mean, I can't imagine living without learning. For me, it's like might as well turn off the whole machine.
Right.
If you're not going to learn anymore, get
No,
out of here.
it keeps your energy going. It keeps you, like you said, lively.
Yeah, and it keeps you looking forward. What am I going to learn today?
This
What am
is
I going to learn tomorrow? I can't hardly wait. I'm like a little kid. It's like Christmas, and I'm opening presents. I get it. And it sounds foolish, and it sounds false maybe, and the rest of that. But there are times when I have no doubt that the good Lord's educated me. He just feeds me stuff. And you get
sure.
something today and something tomorrow, and it's like Christmas time. What am I going to get today? I can hardly wait. It's Christmas time. So, I don't know.
I understand where you're coming from. I'm sure you've probably experienced times where you've asked a question and you didn't think that you'd be given so poignant of an answer by doing your research and uncovering some of the things you
No,
found.
no, no, no. I'm into some things right now. I'm reading an article on statutory interpretation.
Okay.
And it explains how the courts decide what the words mean in a particular law. All right.
Yeah,
Now, I've been working on this in my own way for years,
sure.
but this is the first time I found an article on the subject, and it explains this is how the courts do it, and it's news to me. I've been dissecting words and trying to understand them, and I've been doing just that, and this is news to me. And I'm reading this article, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, this is just great. It's the sort of thing I wish I'd read 15, 20 years ago, but I'm reading it now. And it's working for me. It's the sort of thing that it's important to me. It fits in other things I'm trying to do right now. And it's like, what a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's some of the research that I've been into and some of the groups that I work with. We look at some of the words such as, I'm sure some of the same words you've looked at, person and state, um, in this state and the District of Columbia, and the word including and includes.
Oh, yeah.
So
I did an article back years ago, 10 years ago anyway. I don't remember how long ago, but the article was entitled Definitions Are the Law of the Law.
hmm,
What does the law mean? It's like Bill Clinton. He made that comment. He caught a lot of flack for it and a certain amount of notoriety. It all depends on what the meaning of is. Yeah. Which sounded like he was just typical shyster BS, but
right.
it's not. He was revealing a great secret, and the average person,
Yeah,
what the meaning of is. Everyone knows what is. No, they don't. Most people don't even know what the United States is. They
right.
don't know what the United States of America is. They don't even know where they are, for God's sake. You take the word United States. Hooven and Allison versus Evans, Supreme Court case, declared there were three definitions for the United States, and one was territorial, and one was a sovereign among nations, and one was something else. I can't remember what they were. They did not say there weren't four definitions.
This is true.
Right? They said there's three. They did not say there's 4 or 5 or 10. Okay? They said there was three definitions all by itself. That should be enough to make people roll their eyes. Three different definitions according to the Supreme Court. And then later, they changed and they said there was no United States. And they said United States of America, according to Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition, they came out, United States disappeared. But United States of America appeared. Right? And then after another edition or so, the 8th or 9th, they said United States of America. They said United States, see United States of America. They're trying to equate the two. And the Articles of Confederation tell us that in 1781, they declared that the name of this confederation and perpetual union was the United States of America, and they have it in quotes. And the point I'm trying to make is, it sounds confusing to people, is look, the average person has no idea that there are multiple definitions of something as critical as the words United States, or United States of America, or the United States of America. And everybody thinks we're talking about the same thing, and we're not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you said, it depends on the circumstances. I don't know if it was words that you had read or had written that I had read that said, if someone asked me, "Are you in the United States?" or "Are you a United States citizen?" then your reply would be, "Well, what's your definition of the United States?"
I understand.
Right. Are we talking about one of the states in the Union? Like you said, from the Articles of Confederation. Are we talking about the District of Columbia? Right.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And the average person listening to this is going to say, well, that's silly. That doesn't make any difference. I don't need to know about that. Yeah, you do. Because your government is presuming you to be in a particular United States. And it may be a United States that's contrary to your best interests. But the government presumes that if you don't object to it, say, oh, no, I'm not that United States. If you don't control your own definitions, you're going to be used, exploited, abused. And it's all very legal. Right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. 1935, the Nazis passed the 1935 Nuremberg laws. And in that law, they declared the Jews to be Untermenschen. Unter means under, mensch means man, it meant subhuman, it meant animals. That 1935 law laid the foundation for whatever was going to happen in concentration camps, mass murder, genocide. It was okay to kill the Jews because they had been declared 5 years sooner, prior to that, to be animals.
Right.
Our government has defined us to be animals since 1906, Pure Food and Drug Act. All right? People who think these definitions are meaningless and just how many angels are dancing on the head of a pin, that's what the Jews thought. They thought, oh, no big deal. They call us Untermenschen. It's no big deal. Yeah, it is. It opened the door for the concentration camps and mass murder and genocide. And it's done with words. And the lesson in this is, if you can handle your language, if you can master your language, you can deal with these people. You know, everybody said the oppression, that it's all about guns and clubs and tasers and pepper spray and the rest of it. We are ensnared by words. All right? The guns and the clubs are just incidental.
Right.
They're just window dressing. They impress people, but they're not what gets it done. Words are what get it done. And if you can master the language and you can begin to appreciate the language and the words and the definitions and begin to see the whole system, it's phenomenal. You see it, and it's almost mystical. It's bizarre.
It's built on words.
Yeah. So what got you into all of this?
You know, it would be hard to say what got me specifically into law. I would say that from a young kid, I guess I always questioned what I considered hypocritical voices of authority, whether it came from my father and he would say, because I said so, and I'd say, look, I need a reason. If you know, of course now I'm a father and I say, because I said so, but and I try to give my reasons, you know, giving some respect to that time period. But no, my first encounter.
It never ends once they start saying, "Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy?"
Well,
and you start answering, and it will never end. Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy?
It's true. And sometimes you look in your heart and you're like, I don't have necessarily an absolute good reason, but it's because I really am trying to do this because it feels like this is the most efficient way to operate this household.
Yeah.
But
but it's the same thing that you can do in law. You can become the child and essentially say, "Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy?" And when you start talking about definitions, wow, this is a definition for the United States. Why? Why, Daddy? Wow, well, why? Why? Your questions, you have more questions than they have answers. And if you can learn how to ask questions, you can drive them right out of their minds. And I know that. I've stopped the IRS on 2 occasions. I stopped the Dallas Bar Association, came after me for unauthorized practice of law on 1 occasion. What else have I done? Oh, a friend of mine used the same formula. Notice an opportunity to be heard. I don't know if you've read any of the articles in my blog about that.
I want to hear more about it.
Well, it's one of the, you make a few discoveries. I've been at this now 35 years, and published in a magazine for 30, started publishing a magazine 30 years ago. I'm not publishing it anymore, but over that time, yeah.
I made my own self-printed copy at home.
Where did you get it?
Well, the files that I sent you, I
found. All right.
Yeah.
From Family Law, from the Guardian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to, if you don't have a way to print these out, I'd be happy to print you a copy.
No, I don't want a printed copy. I like digital.
That's nice.
I like digital just because my eyesight is not what it once was.
Sure.
It's easier for me to read on a computer screen than it is in a little magazine and the rest of sort of. But I don't know where I was with that.
Well, I think.
The notice and opportunity.
Exactly.
There's articles on the blog. This is one of the. You make a few discoveries in the entire period I've been doing this. You participate and you kind of help clarify some understanding here and there or whatever. At least you hope you do. But it's nothing significant. But every once in a while you do something that at least impresses me. This is a good one. And what I did with the notice and opportunity to be heard is, I think, powerful. All right? And there may be mixed opinions, but a friend of mine, he saw what I was doing. And he just sent 5 questions to the IRS. And the IRS Austin office sent him, they wanted $77,000 or something like that from him. He sent him 5 questions, and they weren't particularly profound. All right, no great insight. They wouldn't answer. Next thing you know, I got a request from the Philadelphia office, IRS. They said, "You owe $77,000. When can we expect your check?" And blah blah blah. When are you going to file? He responded with questions. Heard no more from Philadelphia. Then he hears from Utah. They sent him around the country. It was kind of like diesel therapy for him. But he had letters from probably, I don't know, a dozen or 15 IRS offices. But once he sent questions, they didn't respond anymore. There was nothing further from that office. It went to another office, and eventually they just stopped. Right? They just stopped. Questions. That's all just questions. And the reason this works is this. Every notice creates an opportunity to ask to a right of inquiry. And the reason for that is the law is that notice need not explain all relevant law and all relevant facts. For example, suppose I loaned you $100 and you promised, I see you on Friday, and you promise you'll have $100 back to me on Monday. But Monday goes by, we get to next Friday, we get to the next week, I see you out in a restaurant someplace or a bar, and I just gesture across the room, just rubbing my fingers together, and making that gesture, and all I'm essentially saying is, where's the money? Now, if you understand that notice, you come over and you give me the $100. Geez, I'm sorry, I forgot all about it. Here's the $100. Let me buy you a drink. Let me buy you dinner, whatever it is. And bang, that's done. The notice is sufficient. All I did was rub my fingers together, and you got the message. If You don't get the message, you look at me and say, what's that idiot talking about? You come over and say, what up? I can amp up my notice and I can say, the money.
Mm-hmm.
Just 2 words, the money. Oh, you can respond and say, oh, yeah, the $100. Geez, I forgot all about it, blah, blah, blah. We go through that dance. Or you can say, what money? I don't know what you're talking about. I can say the $100 bill with serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that I loaned you in front of Bob and Ted and Carol and Alice, and on Friday, the 17th of June. All right, now we know, and now if you sit back and say, I don't know what you're talking about, now it's time for me to go find your car and your tires and maybe poke some holes in them. You understand?
Right.
What I'm trying to communicate is the notice creates your right of inquiry because by law, the notice need not present all relevant facts and law. All right? It's just enough to get the message across.
Okay.
There are 3 possible responses to a notice. One is to make a statement. You can even say, you IRS guys are all going to burn in hell. You satanic SOBs, and you're doomed and you're damned and the rest of stuff. That could be one. And they will thank you for making a statement. Because by law, if you make a statement, it's presumed you have sufficient notice, and procedural due process consists of notice and opportunity to be heard. The opportunity to be heard is when you're going to go in front of a judge, probably an administrative judge, and he's going to find you guilty 98% of the time. You don't want the opportunity to be heard. All right? It's a sentencing. They're not going to listen to it. You're going to be found guilty 98% of the time. How do you stop? You control the notice. You ask questions. That's the second possibility. Nobody thinks about that. You can make statements. It's presumed you have sufficient notice. Now they can take you to the opportunity to be heard where you'll be found guilty 98% of the time. You can go completely silent, throw it in the trash. I don't need to respond to those guys.
Right.
Once again, your silence is presumed to be evidence you have sufficient notice. They can take you to the opportunity to be heard where you'll be found guilty 98% of the time. But you have a right of inquiry because the notice is incomplete. It doesn't have all facts. It doesn't have all law. And you can pose questions, interesting questions. And if you know the right questions, and maybe even, like I said, my friend, he did it with 5 questions and none of them were particularly significant. I stopped the IRS with something like 10, 11 pages of questions. And I've done it twice. First time I didn't know what I was doing. Second time I did. I stopped the state bar of Texas, the Dallas Bar Association, acting on behalf of the state bar. They wanted to come after me for unauthorized practice of law. I responded to their notice. Everything starts with a notice.
So you just respond with questions.
I respond with questions. I respond with questions. The state bar wrote back to me, or the Dallas Bar Association said, Mr. Adask, we don't have time to fence with you over all of these issues you raised. And if you have any, we're sending your file down to the state bar and they can do whatever they want with it.
Right.
And they said, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to ask. I sent them 11 pages of questions and they didn't answer one of them. But their closing comment in their letter of response, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to ask. They're not answering my questions. Right?
So that was a response to a summons or a response to their...
No, it was a response to a notice. It all starts with a notice. Okay. I mean, everything you get from the IRS is a notice. And they're telling you this, that. What about this? What about that? It's a notice that essentially says, we think you owe us some money, or we think you owe us some paperwork. They're sending you a notice, and if you respond with questions, our experience, and it's limited experience, it's just anecdotal, but our experience, my personal experience, my friend's experience, they drop them. Goodbye. We don't want to talk to you. You're asking us questions. And the thing about it, if they send me an answer to my questions, what is their answer? It's another notice. Their answer will create more questions. Right? And if I I will ask more questions about, well, what did you mean when you used the word included? What did you mean when you used the word United States, and so on? I'll have those questions. And also, look, these are not just these are legitimate questions,
Sure.
right? And they will soon realize that I have more questions than I have answers.
And you're not dishonoring them by saying, I
No,
refuse this, I refuse that.
no, no.
You're simply just asking questions to clarify their notice.
That's one of the great things about this. You know, you can get a lot of strategies from patriots that maybe get you in deeper than you already are.
Right.
All right. All I'm doing is asking questions. What's wrong with that? You know,
That's
it doesn't
true.
make things worse. I'm not making statements. I'm not going silent. I am responding. And I know that by law, their notice creates my right of inquiry. My right of inquiry it implies their obligation to answer my questions. So in any case, this has worked well for me, and
That's
it's something I talk
fantastic.
about a lot on like I said, it's anecdotes. That it's worked for me in the past doesn't mean it'll work tomorrow. It's like a lot of things that the IRS does and the government does. You can get over on them for a while, but then they circle their wagons and they kind of defeat whatever your strategy was when you need a new strategy. And
Sure.
but this one seems to be valid. And,
What, I heard you say that you had 11 pages, so I won't ask you to recite all 11 pages of your personal one, but do you have examples for the people who are going to be eventually listening to this that would give them an idea of what kind of questions would be good to ask?
well, I can tell you, like I say, I tend to gild the lily and then shellac the lily and then bronze the lily and the rest of that sort of thing. I
you
overdo this stuff.
you include everything. You throw everything at them.
Oh, I run out of time usually. I run out of time or run out of ink or run out of paper. I got more questions, but
What's
but I don't have any more paper, so this is as much as I can do right now. My friend, he sent 5 questions. I was surprised they worked, and they worked on every office that responded to him. He just sent the same 5 questions. There was nothing remarkable about them. It was kind of like you ever see Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
yeah.
You know, when they're crossing that bridge, their little bridge, they've got this guy there. He's kind of a dwarfish kind of guy. And he says, "What is your favorite color? What is it?" You know, and he said, "You got to answer these 3 questions before you can cross the bridge." And somebody comes up and, "What is your favorite color?" And he says, "Red. No, blue." He gets thrown in. He gets thrown in the canyon. But it's kind of like that with these questions. You ask any questions, and apparently they don't want to answer.
Sure.
Because once they answer any, I think, I don't know why they don't answer any of the questions in our experience. But I think that once they answer any questions, I think it's proof that they will answer all of your questions.
Mm.
And I suspect that's part of the rationale why they don't answer the questions. And they just say, "Okay, get out of here. You're out of." And they don't even say it. They just stop coming.
And do you request a response to the questions with a wet ink signature? Like, do you request them to have a wet ink signature?
No, I've never made that expressly that I can recall, but it's not a bad idea. It's something else. But I'm careful not to make any statements. Everything I have to say to them, I say in the form of questions. It's conceivable. It's probably just being evidence of paranoia, where I sit back and I say, I don't know, I just skipped my mind. I'm getting 73 and I have these little brownouts every so often where I'm running along and all of a sudden something skips my mind. I don't remember what I was saying. I was going along.
Well, you were saying, I think, that you don't make statements.
Oh, I make it my business to construct everything I'm sending to them is in the form of questions. Question number 1, question number 2, question number 3. Everything is yes or no. I'm not doing fill in the blank. All right. I'm not doing just write it, just use as many sheets of paper as you want. No, yes or no, yes or no. And part of the reason for that is it makes it simple. I can ask you, do you speak Swahili? You can answer that yes or no. A 5th grader can answer yes or no. Do you speak Swahili, little boy? Well, yes, no, I do, or no, I do not. Everybody knows if they speak Swahili. Do you understand this? Do you understand that? Do you understand some? I use a lot of "do you understand?"
And that's
And
how
they can say yes or they can say no. I don't care what they answer. Right? I don't care if they say yes. I don't care if they say no, because there's going to be more questions.
I gotcha. So you're asking the agencies yes or no questions.
Yeah, I frame everything as a yes and no question. There's kind of an art to it, but there's a sample up on my blog at adask.wordpress.com. There's a list of categories on the right-hand side. When you get in there, there's a list of categories, and you scroll down and you'll see one that's entitled Notice. And
Let's see.
I've probably got 20 different articles dealing with notice and opportunity to be heard. Right of inquiry, excuse me.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely check it out. I was looking at your site the other day, and it's got, if I recall, it's got a long kind of scrolling page on that first page. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know how they've got it structured right now. There'll be a certain amount of whatever are the newest articles, and I haven't published anything for a year to speak of. It's just been, I don't know, wore out.
Well, it's interesting, and I appreciate this about the internet, is you can publish something several years ago, and because somebody else is just getting into that or just learning about this particular thing, they could find you on there, and it's brand new information. It's wonderful.
Yep, I agree. It's a miracle. Did you ever see, when you went through that, did you happen to look at an article I did on Joseph, the world's first economist?
No, I'd like to read that.
Oh, you should. You really should. I wrote it back in the 90s.
Joseph, Joseph from the Old Testament?
Yep. It's almost astonishing. It tells you can go into Genesis and you can read the story of Joseph when he was dealing with Pharaoh. And his brothers sold him into slavery. The Pharaoh's looking for somebody to interpret his dreams. One of the Pharaoh's people said, there's some guy down in the prison and he thinks he can interpret dreams. They haul him up there and one thing leads to another. And Joseph becomes the Pharaoh's right-hand man. Now, I can remember as a kid the way it was explained to me going to Bible study class when I was, I don't know, 6th grade, 7th grade, something like that. I remember with Mrs. Christensen. She was my friend's mother. She was teaching the class. We colored. We had a picture of Joseph in his coat of many colors.
Right.
And we had to color the lines and the whatever on the coat of many colors. And I remember this. But what Mrs. Christensen explained to us is that Joseph interpreted the dream, and he saw that there was going to be 7 years of bumper crops, followed by 7 years of famine. And so Joseph saved all the excess grain, built granaries during the 7 good years, and so the people would have grain during the 7 bad years. That's the way it was. That's the way the story was presented to me.
Yep.
But if you read the story of Joseph in the Bible, you will see that it's not what happened at all. Joseph saw what was coming, and he cornered the market. The first year the people were broke, he said, look, I'll give you grain, but you got to give me all of your money. Right?
Yeah.
And the people said, why should we die? So they gave him all of their money so they could have grain to eat, to feed themselves and their cattle and whatever else.
Right.
All right? Then it says the money failed. He put all of the money in the Pharaoh's storehouse. There was no money in circulation. They couldn't run an economy without their money. He crippled the Egyptian people, or they could no longer barter and buy and sell things among themselves. The money was gone. The second year they came back and they're starving again, and he says, okay, I'll give you more grain where you could live, but you got to give me all of your livestock. And they did. They gave him all the livestock, and he gave that to Pharaoh. Right? And the people now, that was their means of production. That was gone. Third year they came back and he said, okay, we'll do this. You want more grain? I'll give you more grain, but I'm going to have to put you into bondage. You'll have to agree to be a slave to Pharaoh. Right? He didn't say slave, but that's what it came down to. It's right there in the Bible. It's telling you how Joseph put the people of Egypt into bondage. Right?
You're absolutely
right. The Pharaoh, prior to Joseph, the Pharaoh was kind of like a TV evangelist. You know, right? People say, oh, yeah, there's the Pharaoh. He's a TV evangelist. He didn't own the country. and the people were free. They weren't slaves. Joseph used his understanding of economics. He took the money out. He took the means of production. He took all of their land. He then took they took everybody, put everybody into bondage. They all agreed to be slaves to the Pharaoh. He put the people of Egypt into slavery. And this is interesting. And it's right there. If you read the article, I haven't thought about it for I just never thought about it. But it's an important thing because it's right there in the Bible, and people have been reading it for hundreds of years, and nobody gets it.
You're absolutely right.
It's not out there. I mean, the information is right there, staring us right in the face, and we just skate right on past. Joseph was a good guy. Joseph
Right.
put the people of Egypt into bondage,
Right.
and when you think about it and you see it, then what's the story about the Hebrew people being slaves in Egypt? First off, Joseph put the Egyptian people into bondage. Then later, the Egyptians put the Hebrews into bondage. And we're not just talking about the poor, victimized Hebrews here. All right? We're talking about people who maybe got pissed. The Egyptians say, this was that damn Joseph who put us into bondage. We used to own our own stuff. Now we're slaves. They perhaps carried the grudge against the remaining Hebrew people. I don't know what happened to them, but I'm just saying, Joseph, the world's first economist, it shows you the power of economics. It shows you that they knew several thousand years ago how to control a complete nation, to put it into subjugation. And then you can look at some things like, where's our money?
Right. The Depression in 1933 and FDR.
Not just that, gold and silver.
Right.
Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, Constitution says no state, meaning state of the Union, shall make anything but gold and silver coin of tender in payment of debt. That's never been repealed, never been amended. Where's our gold and silver? Our money has failed in the same sense that the money failed for the Egyptians. They've taken our real money and put it in the Pharaoh's stronghold, in the Pharaoh's treasury, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, the formula is there. You can see it. If you understood, if the average man would sit down and just read that little article, you'd know more about economics than 99% of the people in this country.
That's very insightful, and
it's amazing. It's an amazing situation, and I'm not doing this just to pat myself on the back, whatever. I mean, this is an important insight. It's just, my God, the information is right there. It's been in front of us for a couple thousand years. Well, the length of the Bible. I mean, they've understood a couple thousand years ago, but in terms of the Bible and the Old Testament, but the information has been there for a long time, and nobody gets it.
And like you said, it's not just historical. It's actually something that is very parallel to what has happened in this country.
Yeah. It's astonishing. Yeah. It's astonishing. I mean, they've known how to do this for several thousand years. How do you take over a country? It's easy. One man who understands economics can take over a whole country. Joseph did it to Egypt. And he's got this reputation that he was the hero who saved the people when they went into the famine period. No, he didn't. He put them into bondage.
Well, it's almost not quite, but it reminds me of like a wife who might take your money and put it aside, part of your money while you're not looking, just for the rainy day, and then all of a sudden something happens. She says, "Hey, look what I have," and you say, "Well, damn." On one hand, you're like, "Thank you." On the other hand, you're like, "Well, shoot, you took from me."
Well, I get what you're saying.
Not quite
but
the same.
In this instance of Joseph, he took the money and he did not give it back in the rainy day.
This is true.
If the people had the money, they could have kept working. They could have come up with new prices. What's the price of a cow? What's the price of grain? Whatever. We could have bought, if we had money, we could have bought grain from, who knows, Assyria or someplace. Somebody had grain. They weren't all in famine. We could have used our money. We could have sent it to Assyria, and they could have sent us some grain and blah, blah, blah. We would have had a chance if we had some money. No, they took the money out of circulation. They say the money failed, but they also say that he put it all in the Pharaoh's storehouse.
Right. No
money.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it lays out the plan for how to take over a country by resource control.
Mm-hmm. And again, what's just astonishing to me is part of the reason why I bring this article up is the information's been there for centuries, and nobody gets it. Yeah. Nobody gets it. It's just a question of reading, like I say, it's all done with words. If you can master the language, you can hold these people at bay. If you can't master the language, you will live in bondage.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's interesting. Do you see a similar parallel with the walk of Jesus, as far as a nonprofit walk, if you will, and then I guess paralleling our time period today and working for the system, having to have a social security number, having to have some kind of identification number in order to receive Federal Reserve notes?
Oh, I understand. I understand what you're talking about. I mean, it's the sort of thing where you take those numbers, you take those Federal Reserve notes. I think they create presumptions. I know two people who've told me the same story, and I believe it to be true. They pointed out that oh, here we go again, another one of these brain farts. It happens increasingly as I get older. Where was I going with that?
FRNs, and you're saying that some people.
Yeah, right. That's it. Judge orders the bailiff. He's contesting with someone who's got a mentality, an attitude similar to yours or my own. And he's contesting with his defendant, and the defendant is arguing that he's not subject to the judge's jurisdiction. And the judge orders the bailiff to check this guy's pockets out and see if he's got any Federal Reserve notes in it. All right. I know that Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution of the United States says no state, meaning state of the Union, because that's the only kind of states they had when the Constitution was written, no state of the Union shall make anything but gold and silver coin of tender in payment of debt. Right. Okay? There's no gold and silver in circulation right now. There's a little around, you can buy it, but there's no gold or silver in general circulation, and the government doesn't back the currency with gold and silver and the rest of that sort of thing. What does that tell us? It tells us that either what passes for states are not states of the Union.
Thank you.
That's one thing it tells us. Or it tells us that the state governments are acting unlawfully every time they touch a Federal Reserve note. The Federal Reserve notes are lawful in states of the United States, which are territorial administrative districts. They're not lawful in the states of the Union. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 says that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin of tender in payment of debt. It means if they're using anything but gold and silver coin, they're breaking the law if they're states of the Union, or they are not states of the Union. And I think this is why the judge is asking his bailiff, see if this guy's got any Federal Reserve notes. Because if you're using Federal Reserve notes, it becomes presumptive evidence that you have voluntarily walked into this alternative state, a state of the United States rather than a state of the Union. And I know, I mean, you're nodding your head. I can see you nodding your head. You get kind of what I'm talking about. Average person listening to say, that guy's crazy. Well, no, I'm not certifiable. There's not enough beds in the nut house for people with my level of madness just yet. They may be working on it, but they, I don't reach them.
If this is me saying the same thing as you said earlier, I'm in no way trying to pat anything on my back, but you would not believe what you just said to me just now. I was driving the other day with my queen in the car, and she was next to me, and I turned the radio down. I said, let me throw a theory past you. And I said, almost to the T, exactly what you just said. I said, Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution says that no state may make anything but gold and silver tender in payment. I said, we know that the federal government can do whatever they want because it's not directing them, but it's saying that no state can do this.
That's right.
And so I said, okay, well.
And it doesn't say no territory can do it. It doesn't say no administrative district. It's only an imposition on the states of the Union. The Fed can use anything it wants for currency. They can use corn cobs, or they can use worthless pieces of paper. Right. All right? The states alone are inhibited from using anything but gold. States of the Union are inhibited from using anything but gold and silver coin. It opens the door. It was a great and terrible flaw in the Constitution, in my opinion. But go ahead.
Well, I'm only paraphrasing exactly what you just said. I turned to her, I said, that could only mean two things. I said either it's legal because they're not actually states and they're federal territories or federal corporations, subcorporations, or like you said, I said, or they're in direct violation of the Constitution. There's only, in my opinion, one of those two options.
Yeah, right. They're either operating illegally or they're not a state of the Union. If they're not a state of the Union, What moved you into it?
Right.
It's just presumptive. Under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 of the Constitution says that the Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over the territories and other properties of the United States.
Yeah.
I think under the pretext, I can't prove this, but I think under the pretext, oh my gosh, the gold and silver is gone. We have a national emergency. We don't have any gold and silver. I think that was the pretext for creating this alternative set of states. And they are directly under Congress under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. My theory, can't prove it, don't know it to be fact. Right? But I think that's what's going on. And it's all about the money. When you look at it from this perspective, you can see, sure, the Federal Reserve likes this just fine. We can print worthless pieces of paper.
Right.
And we can, then people will give us things for these worthless pieces of paper. You know, let me explain something to you about the idea of redemption.
Okay.
Imagine that you're running a little store and you sell electrical equipment and whatever, including a nice flat screen TV for $1,000. I want the flat screen TV. I give you a check for $1,000 for the flat screen TV. Are you paid?
No, not till I get the check redeemed, but I guess
that's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right. You're not paid. I gave you the check, but all that is an IOU. It's a debt instrument. It's a promise to pay. It's not a payment. It's a promise to pay. How do we pay? You go home, you go back to your bank, you deposit my check into your bank account. Your bank takes my check out, they send it over to my bank. My bank looks in my bank account. They say, oh my gosh, Adask actually has $1,000 in his bank account. Who would have thought that was possible? They pull the $1,000, assuming we had really awful money. They pull the $1,000 out of my bank account, goes to my bank, goes to your bank, goes to your account. Now you've been paid. And the important point is the payment came from my account. I wrote the check. I got the flat screen TV. It has to be me who pays. I'm the one who has to redeem that promissory note. I'm the one that has to redeem that check out of my bank account. By law, Federal Reserve notes are not redeemable by the Federal Reserve. The only thing you can do to redeem your Federal Reserve notes with the federal government is pay taxes. All right? By law, you can't redeem with the Federal Reserve or the federal government. How do you how do you get redemption? Meaning, I give you a piece of paper, says $1,000 on it. You're not going to get the $1,000 out of my account. Where are you going to get them?
Say that again. You're saying you give me $1,000 in a
Well, I wrote a check.
Right,
Figuratively speaking, what I'm going to do is try to compare this to what goes on with the Federal Reserve note.
Right.
Federal Reserve note's doing the same thing. I'm writing a check for $1,000, but it can't be redeemed against my account. How rich can I get? I got a flat screen TV from you. I can buy. If I can get somebody, if by law you can't redeem my checks against my account, I can go buy myself a new pickup truck. I buy myself a new house. I can buy myself a city, a county. I can buy myself a state or a world as long as my payments are not redeemed against my account.
Sure.
This is the foundation for big government.
Absolutely.
This is the foundation. All right. I think this is so. With Federal Reserve notes, piece of paper, everything you get. If it's a piece of paper with a signature on it, it's nothing but a promise to pay.
Right.
It's not a payment. A payment's gold and silver coin, or a rifle, or a box of bullets, or food, or a house. Something tangible is a payment.
Substance.
Yes, that's a payment. The paper is all nothing but a promise to pay.
Right.
How do you fulfill the promise? You're working for the government. They give you $1,000 a week. You get $2,000 every, first and 15th. You get a check for $2,000. How do you redeem it?
Well,
you turn it into Federal Reserve notes. You put it in your account, do whatever, and then you go out and you find some dummy, like the guy across the street, or your mother, or your dad, or your wife, and you give them $1,000, and they give you cake. Right. Or they give you steak, or they give you a bass boat, or they give you. We, the people, are redeeming the Federal Reserve notes that have been issued by the Federal Reserve. We do it by giving up our land. We give up for worthless pieces of paper. I don't get paid. When I take a Federal Reserve note, I don't get paid by the Federal Reserve. I get paid by the guy down at the grocery store.
Well said.
He gives me food. And then he takes that $1,000 and he passes it on to somebody else for, again, the bass boat, for whatever else, motor for his bass boat, whatever it is he's going. We, the people, are redeeming the government's green pieces of paper.
Right. That's well said.
Well, it's
true. It's true.
It's a surprise that the government is growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Figuratively speaking, they're not paying their debts. They don't have to redeem their own currency. They just put that stuff up and they let us redeem it among ourselves.
Right. Well, it feels like my thought process over the years has been that it's like your dad had a company that was all paid off. He was doing really well, and then he passed it on to you. And then after you got it, the banks came along and said, hey, look, your dad's got this amazing company. Why don't you take out a $50,000 equity loan? And you're like, well, sure, okay. And you take a $50,000, and then next thing you know, they come back, a year later, and they say, how about a $150,000 equity? And next thing you know, you are maxed out in equity on the property that your dad had paid off, and they allow you to still continue to run because you're making a profit. But eventually, the debt interest rate that they're charging you, eventually you're not going to be able to get any more credit extended, and eventually they're going to foreclose on the business. My question,
and that means they're going to take the property, they're going to take your company, and this is exactly what's happened to family farmers.
And
they bring them in, come on in, borrow some money, and you get the money you need to put the next crop in.
Yep.
Borrow the money you need for the tractor. I want you to do that for a while. Next thing you know, the bank is going to own your land.
Right.
And I don't know who they're going to sell it to. The bank will, maybe, I'm not arguing that they're going to keep your land, but you're going to lose your land to a system that encourages you to go into debt.
Right. Yeah. So I guess my overall question was, for that scenario, is that, and I believe the answer is yes, is that happening to the United States as a whole, right?
Yeah. I'd say it is.
Yeah.
I'd say it is. And it wouldn't matter if we only said it's only happening to 20% of the United States. It's still wrong. It's happening with the complicity of the government. It's happening with the complicity of Congress and presidents and federal court judges and the rest of that. They're all in on it, whether they know it. I won't say that everybody understands what they're doing, but they're all in on it.
Yeah.
They're all profiting from it.
Has to be.
Yeah. And it's one of the great problems. We find out that our government is betraying our trust. Our government is working actively against us. It's not just, gee, they made a mistake or they did something stupid. That's not what's going on here. If it was just a question of government doing something stupid, it's like flipping a coin. Sometimes it comes up heads, sometimes it comes up tails. Sometimes it comes up smart, sometimes it comes up stupid. What was the last law you can point to where you said, well, the government really, they were smart on this one. They did a good thing. Right. I mean, we know they do stupid things and bad things, but there's got to be some good ones if it's just random.
Right.
They got to do something right once in a while. It's hard to think. What have they done right?
Or something you could say they were truly looking out for the people.
No. Oh, absolutely not.
You made me. You caused me to think about two things in your last few statements, which was in reading your articles in Anti-Shyster. I did read your article on the farms and how the people are, are losing their farms and then allowing them to become general managers, and they think it's good, but it's taken. I appreciate that article very much. But I also wanted to point to the next article that I read of yours, which was speaking on the idea of bad faith. And then it kind of leads us into our discussion a little bit that we initially talked about, which would be trust law, and maybe the first idea of trust law in this country, which to me revealed itself to be the Constitution itself. Maybe you would say the Articles of Confederation, but when I read the state constitution of Virginia, it specifically mentions that the power is inherently in the people, and the magistrates are their trustees and shall be amenable at all times to them. And it made me realize at least some form of trust or fiduciary relationship was involved.
Yep. I saw the same thing, or much the same thing in the Texas Constitution. It's like Article 1 is the Bill of Rights of the Texas Constitution, and I think it's Section 2 under Article 1. Mm-hmm. And it says, this Constitution is established by the people of the state of Texas for the benefit of
Right.
the people of the state of Texas. That's what told me that the Constitution of the state of Texas is a trust.
Right.
And it's an express trust, meaning it's written. It's not just an implied trust, which you get from comic.
Right.
It's express, and it's also a charitable trust. Charitable trusts are the only ones that can last in perpetuity. The other trusts expire in the neighborhood of something like 110 years.
Right.
They're only good for, I don't know, something 20, life plus 20 years or something.
Exactly.
All right. But a charitable trust can last forever. And that's what the state constitutions and the Constitution of the United States are doing. They're lasting essentially forever. They seem to be, at least.
Sure.
And that implies they must be an express charitable trust. And I've argued that. I argued that I got sued for 25 grand a day by the Attorney General of Texas.
You got
back
sued,
in 2000.
or you sued them?
No, me. No, they sued me. The manufacture and distribution of a controlled substance. I was a fiduciary for a trust that leased some tables and chairs and a couple of computers to a corporation that manufactured colloidal silver.
Okay.
All right. They were going after colloidal silver. The cases started in 2001 against Mr. and Mrs. William Fresnel and their corporation. They were the biggest manufacturers of colloidal silver in the United States. And this case was initiated by the FDA. It was on their recommendation that it be prosecuted, but it was prosecuted by the Attorney General of Texas and the Texas Department of State Health Services. And each defendant is threatened with fines of $25,000 a day. 25 grand a day.
Wow.
Mr. Fresnel, 25 for Mrs. Fresnel, 25 for the corporation. 75 grand a day for their business.
For every day that you stay open.
Yeah. So that was the threat. They hired one of the better law firms in Texas. They spent $160,000 on law firm. They got nothing out of it. Eventually, it drove them into bankruptcy and then divorce, and they left Texas for parts unknown. But before they did, they sold some of their equipment and some of their supplies. They didn't sell their business, but they sold some of their equipment, some of their supplies to a man named Ben Taylor and his corporation and his trust. The case had kind of died off and nothing was going on and they thought it was over. But as soon as he bought in, the state came back. They added him and his corporation and his trust as 3 more defendants. Now, this is for colloidal silver. This is a civil case. This is not criminal. This is not about heroin and, crack or whatever else, meth or something like that. But still, it relies on the same laws. All right? And somebody told Ben Taylor, somebody listened to me on the radio, and he said he knew Ben Taylor, and Ben was under the gun on this stuff, threatened with, again, fines, 25 grand a day for him, his trust, and his corporation. I said, you got to talk to this guy Adask. Maybe he knows something. He might be able to help him. Called me up, and I agreed to help him. And one thing led to another, and Ben didn't like to talk in public. So I volunteered to be fiduciary for his trust, which was a defendant in the case.
Okay.
Because I thought it would give me standing to speak in court.
Right.
Okay. Well, much to my surprise, as fiduciary, I did not expect I would be made a defendant. They made me a defendant. Now I'm on the hook for $25,000 a day.
Lord.
If this thing had gone bad, $9 million a year, this thing lasted for a couple of years that I was associated with it. In theory, I could have been clipped for $20 million off this thing.
Holy cow.
Focuses your attention quite a lot.
As the trustee, they were considering you a legal responsible.
Oh yeah, they named me as a defendant, and it turned out I didn't know that. I didn't understand that about trust law and the rest of that sort of thing. So it was part of my lesson. But the Texas Attorney General's case said, and they had 3 filing cabinets full of paperwork. This has been going on from 2001. I didn't get involved until 2006.
Okay.
It's been going on for 5 years before I got involved. They had 3 filing cabinets full of materials on paper from that had been filed and motions, one thing, another like that, been going on for 5-6 years by the time I got involved in it. Another having my 3rd brownout for the day. Where was I going with this?
You were talking about being a fiduciary for the trustee. For the your friend's defense.
Well, here's what happened. Their case said the key to this case is deciding whether colloidal silver is a drug as defined by Title 21, Section 321 of the United States Code, or, and I don't remember the sections, I don't remember the section, but there was a virtually identical section that defined drugs in Texas law.
Right.
Okay? Is it a drug? That was the key to the case. Well, I sat back and said, if that's the key to the case, that's where I have to devote my energy. If we can defeat the presumption that it's a drug, then we skate.
Right.
And I guarantee you, we're getting paperwork, certified mail, every 2 to 6 weeks. We're getting another thick, 3/4 of an inch envelope, certified mail from the Attorney General of Texas, threatening us with the next hearing and the next, whatever it is, every 2 to 6 weeks. It is sobering, all right?
Huh.
But I read the relevant law, and you can look at this yourself. I mean, you can do this. This is not a problem. You can verify what I'm telling you. Title 21, Section 321, and I think it's subsection G of the United States Code defines food, defines, actually G I think is drugs, but food is also defined the same way, and so are devices, as are medical devices. And what they say, I read the relevant law, and it says, and it refers to man or other animals. And the first thing I say to myself, by these damn fools, they don't even know how to write. Man or other animals means that they deem man to be an animal.
Exactly.
They didn't say man or animals, they said man or other animals. I can say a cow or other animals, makes perfect sense. I can say a dog or other animals, it makes perfect sense. Animal is a big generic class, a dog is a specific example of that class. Animals are a generic class, a cow is a specific example of that class. A cow is an animal, a dog is an animal. If I said a rock or other animals, that doesn't make sense. A rock is not an animal.
Right.
Right? So I said, I realized, I said, man or other animals, why do it? Man is an animal. And I'm a student of the Bible. Genesis 1, 26 through 28 says, on the 6th day, God created man in his image and gave man dominion over the animals. That means that as a Christian, you can't call me an animal without violating my freedom of religion. I can't, as a Christian, I can't be an animal. As a Jew, I can't be an animal. And we've got First Amendment, we've got Freedom of Religion Act, we've got a bunch of stuff to support me. I can sit back and say, look, you can't subject me to a law that presumes me to be an animal. And when I was reading this, first time I saw it, I thought, damn fools don't know how to write. And then it says it again. It says it a second time in Section 321, or it's Title 21, Section 321. It says it the second time, man or other animals in the definition of drugs. The whole war on drugs is based on the premise that you are nothing but livestock.
Huh.
You understand that?
Yeah, man, I'm hearing that.
The billions of, I can see you hearing it. I can see the look on your face. You get what I'm talking about here. All right? I raised this argument. I've never heard it before, and I don't think anyone else had either. We found it the same thing in the Texas Code. It says man or other animals twice. I cobbled a lawsuit together, defense said, look, we're men and women made in God's image, and we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights as per the Declaration of Independence, and you can't declare us to be animals without violating our freedom of religion. There is no God's blessing for the animal. Did we? I think we just lost. Are you still there?
Yeah, can you see the,
I can.
I just pulled up.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're doing. Yeah. Let me see if I can find.
I think this is it right here, what you were talking about, right?
I'm looking for G. Device. You can look at H, for example. Device.
Okay. Here's G right here.
G. All right, go ahead. Term drug means A, blah, blah, blah. Articles, B, articles intended.
Under food, it says man or other animals.
Yeah.
Right here, man or other animals, man or other animals.
Yes, man or other animals. Yes. It's all over. We found 23 separate instances of man or other animals in federal law and state law and federal regulations, Code of Federal Regulations. We found 23 separate instances that applied in that case. All right? man or other animals. They presume us. We have talked for years about how the government thinks we're just animals on the global plantation. But we're half joking. I read this and I realized, my God, it's not a joke. They really do see us as animals.
Wow.
Our Declaration of Independence started this country and says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. There's no unalienable rights for animals. There's only unalienable rights for men and women made in God's image. That's all you get. And if you don't define yourself, this is another one of these things. Hey, man, come on over here. What kind of man? Are you talking about an animal man? Are you talking about an evolved man? Or are you talking about men made in God's image? And it's not a small thing.
You're absolutely
This is what happened to the Jews when they declared them to be animals. They undermentioned. They were released from the status of a man made in God's image. Now you can kill them just like you can kill cow, pig, sheep, and goats. Animals, livestock. This is no game. And this goes back to the 1906. So far as we know, the earliest instance of this was the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act, which you can find. You can screen. You can Google it. 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act.
All right, I'm doing it. You're saying that was the first time it had appeared in there?
That's the first time we found them. They defined both food and drugs in terms of man or other animals. This has been going on. I read this and understood it for the first time in 2006. All right. That was the first time I read and understood this. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the first man in a century to read the damn law and understood what it meant on a spiritual basis. First layman. Now, people at the top get this, I'm sure, that are writing it. This is not an accident.
Right.
This isn't a misstatement. We found 23 separate instances. This goes all the way back to 1906. These, incidentally, are acts of... Did you get to 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act?
I'm pulling up right now.
Okay. I think it's... Well, you scroll through and you'll see the definition. It might be...
Let's see.
Might be section 6. I don't remember for sure anymore. But you will see the definition of food and the definition of drugs. Both of them are in terms of man or other animals.
That's interesting. I had a very...
It's not just interesting. It's genocide. You can go to a publication called genocidewatch. I think it's .org. It might be .net. The Genocide Watch.
Here's the Food and Drug Act.
Okay. I think it's section 6, but I don't remember for sure.
All right. Yeah, right here. Man or other animals, right
there.
there.
Yeah, here it is. The term drug is used in that shall include medicines, preparations of the United States pharmaceutical, blah, 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 and any substance intended for their cure of either man or other animals.
Yep.
Right, 1906. Food, the term food. If you eat food, you are presumed to be an animal. If you're buying groceries, you are presumed to be an animal.
Well, and it's... They're looking at it as if the way that we're describing right now, this or other animals, they're saying that animals are regulatable the same as the same persons are regulatable that they create, right?
Well, hey, you want to see another one? Pick up Title 1, Section 8.
Title 1, U.S.
United States Code, Section 8.
8?
I believe it's, yes, I think it's 8, if I'm remembering correctly.
All right, let's see what we got. Come on, slow internet. All right, here we go. Person, human being, child, individual.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, let's pull it up.
This is the definition.
I can't wait to see this.
Yeah. There's another one.
Right. Here it comes. Yeah, it's like you were talking about in the beginning, definitions are everything.
Yeah, it's all there. It's there, and if you can put this together, well, in any case, we can look at this Title 1, Section 8 in a moment, whenever you get that up. But once I sent this freedom of religion defense to the Attorney General's office, All right? They went dead silent for 5 months. We've been getting certified mail every 2 to 6 weeks from them. They went dead silent for 5 months. When we got back, the chief administrative judge for Travis County, which is the seat of government down here in Texas, John K. Dietz, he took over the case and he held it for something like 6 months after that.
Huh.
All right. Prior, they have a different judge every time they walk in the door. This time, he took the case and he held it. And in the end, they simply stopped. They didn't say you win. They didn't say we move this way. They didn't make a motion. They did nothing. They simply stopped coming. They had invested 6 years and nearly $500,000 in pretrial investigations and pretrial hearings in this case, and they simply stopped because they didn't want to go in front of a jury where the jury would understand that the government thinks that the jurors are nothing but animals.
And you sent them a Freedom of Information Act to...
No, I sent them no Freedom of Information Act. I filed an answer to their lawsuit. And I just said, look, I'm one of the people of the state of Texas. I had a couple of lines of defense, but the main thing was this man or other animals.
Right.
You can't call me an animal. And this is something they cannot get around because I've got a First Amendment that guarantees my freedom of religion. I've got a Article 1, Section 6 of the Texas Constitution guarantees freedom of religion.
Let me ask
the idea that we are made in God's image is the second most important principle in the Bible. First principle is Genesis 1, Section 1. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Most people look at that and they think it's like the beginning of a novel. An old novel. It was a dark and rainy night. Right. That's not what it is. It's a statement of legal title. The Creator owns the creation. All right? It's the same thing we see in patent law and copyright law. The author, the inventor, the guy the creator, whatever it is that you create, you own it. You can do whatever you want with it because you created it.
Normally,
Genesis 1:2 is saying, look, he owns the whole shebang because he created it.
Since the beginning.
It's a legal statement. It's a legal premise. Yeah. And it's exactly where it should be. The first verse in the Bible says he owns it. That's what makes him God. The act of creation makes him God. He can do whatever he wants with his creation.
Well said.
And the second most important principle is that mankind, the Genesis 1:26-28, man and man alone is made in God's image. Nothing else is made in God's image. That gives us special. Genesis 9:6 tells us why you can't murder a man. It's because he's made in God's image. You can't kill a man because he's made in God's image. That's why murder is illegal. In the world of evolution, which is where they want you to be in the animal world, killing a man is a commercial offense. The man may have been productive. Might have been able to get some money out of him. It's like you shot my prized bull. I expected to make a lot of money off that bull. You gotta come up with some money to compensate me for the loss of my bull. But there's no crime in shooting the bull per se.
Right.
All right? But there is, under the Bible, your life is protected in theory. I don't mean that you're guaranteed nor that sort of thing, but it is a crime to kill a man or a woman because they're made in God's image. This is Genesis 9:6.
I agree with you, and not just for biblical, scriptural reasons, and I am a Bible lover and student of the Bible as well, and I appreciate the law references and the reflection that it gives us in our lives, but the idea of trespass, the idea of the common law of contracts and trespass, to me, emanates very nicely out of the idea of love thy God with all thy heart and love thy neighbor as yourself. And all laws hanging on those two laws, to me, it represents very well, it translates very well into this idea of not trespassing on another man's rights.
You see what we're dealing with here. We're talking about law. We're going to the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906. We're going to the current Title I, Section 8 of the United States Code. We're dealing with the current definition of food and drugs and medical devices in the United States Code and also Texas Code. I don't remember the section of the number.
Well, I'm seeing right here.
But what we're talking about law, but what we are engaged in is spiritual warfare. Right. And a lot of people listen, what's spiritual warfare? It's great. Yeah, I would have thought so too. 20, 30 years ago, I would have thought so too. But I've learned over time, well, this is spiritual warfare. That's what we're seeing here right now. You are being presumed to be not a man made in God's image. You are presumed to be nothing but an animal under the theory of evolution. And we're looking at, you've got Title 1, Section 8. Is in determining the meaning of any act of Congress or any ruling. And I don't know if this means any from here on out. This law was, I think, 2002. I don't know if they mean merely any new act since 2002. It appears to be retroactive. It says any rule, regulation, or interpretation of the various administrative bureaus and agencies of the United States. The words person, human being, child, and individual shall include every infant member of the species Homo sapien who is born alive at any state of development. Now, most people will say, well, this is just talking about abortion. Yeah, but if the child is an infant member of the species Homo sapien, okay, what are his parents? They are members of the species Homo sapien. Where do we find the words Homo sapien? In the taxonomy, the system of classifying plants and animals and whatever. And Homo sapien is in the animal kingdom. They're not talking about a man made in God's image. They're talking about animal kingdom. And they're saying a person, human, child, or individual. If you are in that, you are deemed to be an animal. If you're an animal, you don't have any God-given rights. The second sentence says, we hold these truths that all men, mankind, all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When do you get your unalienable rights?
The moment you are born, the moment you are...
No, sir.
Say, when do you get your rights?
When do you get your unalienable rights? Given unalienable rights, you are endowed by your Creator with certain unalienable rights.
I mean, what would be the first moment that you're thought in the Christ's mind?
No, that's basically correct. But where I'm going is this: it's the moment you were created.
Right.
If where all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, it follows that those unalienable rights catch at the moment of your creation. I believe there's a verse in Jeremiah in the Bible where God is talking to Jeremiah, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb, which implies that we were created before we were conceived. But certainly we are created no later than the moment of conception. Which means unborn babies have unalienable right to life. Animals don't, but unborn babies that are still fetuses and whatever embryos that are in their mother's womb, they are classified as members of mankind made in God's image. They still have under the Declaration of Independence, they have the right to life, and abortion would be illegal. It would be criminal act, murdering a member of the species, murdering a member of mankind made in God's image. Where was I going? Well, that's third sentence of the Declaration of Independence. Second sentence says we get our best and most important rights from God. All right. Third sentence of the Declaration of Independence says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of government. All I'm going to focus on is the first half of that third sentence. It says that to secure these governments are instituted among men. Not among animals, but among men. What do those governments do? What is their prime directive? What is the first thing they must do? They must secure the God-given unalienable rights to everyone in that under to that government. That to secure these rights, what rights? The God-given unalienable rights in the second sentence. Third sentence again, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. They're telling us primary purpose of at least state governments, because that's what was being created by the Declaration of Independence.
True.
All right, it doesn't necessarily apply to federal government, a national government, but it does apply to the state governments. First order of business is to secure our God-given unalienable rights. But if you're not a man, if you're just an animal, they don't have to secure your rights. They have no obligation. Obligation is not there. They don't have to protect you. I mean, this is something central. And it's been going on since 1906. So far as I know, that's the earliest instance. And we looked at 5 other states at the time, and they all had men or other animals definitions of drugs and so on. Sure. And I don't know it for it to be true, but I assume that virtually every state of the United States, which are not states of the Union, states of the United States, I think probably all include the man or other animals definitions of drugs.
That's right.
That I have to. And even if I'm not, I'll bet that the 40 states have those definitions. I have no doubt that's true. And probably 50-50, but it's not necessarily so.
Well, the FDA rules over states anyway, correct?
Well, it rules over food, which is defined in terms of man or other animals, and drugs, which is defined in terms of man or other animals. It rules over the animals. An old woman, Desi Andrews, down in Austin, Texas, where she was, Desi, a dedicated researcher into legal reform issues and whatever, and considered 20, 30 years, I've never on this. But she was, and I haven't seen her now for 10 years probably, but she was talking about the Department of Agriculture under whatever title that is in the United States Code, and I don't know what it is. She said there are surprising powers. She's reading it. She's going through it. She said there are surprising powers squirreled away for the Department of Agriculture. And at the time, all I remember, that's as much as I remember what she said. But it was before I really got into this man or other animals thing. And in retrospect, I never talked to Desi about it after that. Don't know what else, what she found and what. But in retrospect, it would make perfect sense if the Department of Agriculture had surprising control over we the animals.
Sure.
If they're controlling the farms and they're controlling agriculture, I wouldn't be surprised if they had some surprising powers in the Department of Agriculture to deal with what used to be, what the government used to think of as people.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I babble on here for the last, I don't know how long on this thing, but I get excited about this. And one of the things that really disturbs me is I've been promoting these ideas and trying to explain them to people now since 2006, and I